I want to talk about this whole healthcare thing that's going on in America because uh, at this point, everybody's been saying, okay, Obamacare was a disaster. It needs to be repealed and replaced with something really, really good, and that really, really good thing is going to be awesome. And it's kind of funny, like some of the Donald Trump impressions, because it's like, oh yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. It's going to be really, really good. And we'll see what happens because this is a really messy situation. It's interesting because Paul Ryan, so he started out as being a fiscal conservative back when Obama got into office. That's when Paul Ryan started to kind of confront the government spending, started to take a stand against certain things going on, because what politicians have been doing is they've been essentially raiding Social Security and a lot of these funds that people like taxpayers like myself, like you, we pay into these funds expecting it to be there when we retire. But these governments, when they don't have money to do certain things, they raid Social Security to fund other things. Okay, they move their money around, they borrow from those funds, they create all this government debt, and what that essentially does is it's gotten so out of control that we're a country where we literally have more debt than the entire national GDP, which is absolutely insane. Now, Paul Ryan initially was a guy that was thoroughly against this kind of stuff. He wanted to pass a balanced budget amendment, which I agree with. The government should be forced to balance out the budget before they can pass a bill. That should be required. That should be written into the Constitution. That is something that I think we can all agree on. The government should not be spending more money than it's taking in. Excuse me here. I'm just getting over being a little bit sick because it is freezing cold where I'm at, thus the hat and the sweatshirt. But think about this for a second. Now, you get into this whole thing of nationalized healthcare. The state I come from has a great state healthcare program that is funded by the taxpayers for people that are poor. So when I first got married to my wife, we were super low income. We just got married. She got pregnant. She had to quit her job. And we were actually able to take advantage of that because we needed healthcare because she was pregnant. And I was running a business at the time. I didn't have a lot of money. So it was a nice safety net program to help us out when we needed it. But that was on the state level. That was not Obamacare. That was not Medicaid. It was not a federally run program. This was a state program. And I think the point that I've heard Paul Ryan make, I've heard different people make, is that healthcare is better. It's done better on the state level. And I can agree with that, at least from my experience. Now, I don't know about every state because there's 50 states out there. There's certain states that have terrible health coverage. So I'm assuming that my state is maybe a little bit unique. Not every state is as good. Now, we do already have a federal program called Medicaid. What Medicaid is supposed to do is for low-income people, it's supposed to give them health care. Now, there's been some problems with Medicaid because what's happening is certain doctors aren't getting reimbursed for the amounts that they should be getting. So they're basically not getting paid enough by Medicaid, and so they're not taking people that are on Medicaid because basically Medicaid is saying, well, we're not going to pay you your full rate. We're just going to pay you like a fraction of that and just deal with it, right? So some of these doctors are saying, well, hey, like, I went to med school. I'm worth, X amount of dollars per hour. Your average physician, they're worth $100, $200 an hour because they went to medical school, right? So they do need to be compensated appropriately. So some of the holes with Medicaid are that it's just not paying the doctors enough, so they're dropping it. So it's interesting that this whole thing with Obamacare happened because we, quote-unquote, had people that were not insured. Well, the interesting dynamic is that, okay, if you're low income, if you have a state program and if you have Medicaid available, if you're low income, you can get health insurance, okay? Like there's nothing in the American system that does not provide for poor people. And that was before Obamacare, okay? We already had things in place. And even before all these programs came into place, there were a lot of different organizations, NGOs, church-run hospitals, things like that were giving out free medical care to low-income people, okay? So there's always kind of been certain things in place, and since we've had Medicaid, we've had different state programs, there's been really good programs in place in a lot of different states. Now, the big challenge with healthcare is that everything's too expensive. And I experienced this when I went to school for biochemistry. I was actually going to school to be a pharmacist. And the reason that I changed my major and finished with a business degree was because I fundamentally disagreed with the system. Because what you do in pharmacy and biochemistry is you research new drugs. And once you come out with a new drug, what you essentially do is that drug gets patented by a big corporation, a big medical company, and they essentially control that patent, so they can set the pricing on it. So let's just say that you come out with a cure for cancer, right? Or you come out with a new drug that can fight a certain kind of cancer, okay? So you spend all this time researching it, they pay you, you develop the drug. Well, rather than having that drug widely available to the public for a reasonable price, that drug company can say, hey, we've got the patent for this, so we want to charge $10,000 for one little thing of pills. And nobody's regulating that. Nobody's contesting that and saying, hey, you guys are charging too much, or things like that. So that's on the prescription medication side. There's a lot of different facets to the healthcare system, but that's a big issue. Now, the other big issue with the healthcare system is that people are living longer and they're very sick. So we have a big uptick in people that need counseling and professional need to go to see a professional psychologist or a psychiatrist. There's been a big uptick in that, and initially that was actually not part of health coverage. Like if you wanted to go to a counselor, you had to pay out of pocket for that, but now that's been part of healthcare plans, so that's driving up the cost of health insurance. So and as technology evolves, like if you have a new process in place, and let's just say the machine costs $10 million, and you go through that machine one time, I mean, that can cost $5,000 just to get a certain type of scan or a certain type of procedure, because it's a new procedure and the technology is so expensive that it drives up the cost of healthcare. On top of that, we also have problems with anybody that has drug abuse, drinks a lot, because, like in colleges, right? Everybody's getting smashed, everybody's getting hammered. But when you look at the long-term health effects, like especially with women, there's a really high cancer risk rate, especially for breast cancer, in women that drink a lot. So these like girls that go out and party on weekends, they're at very high risk for getting breast cancer. And you can research it yourself. I mean, this is very, very true. So we have a culture where, we got a lot of people that are drinking, smoking, all this stuff, and that's causing a lot of cancer. And as you know, cancer treatment is very, very, very expensive. So what it's doing is it's driving up the cost of healthcare. And the fast food, and I think, like if you kind of go back to rural America back in the day when you kind of had to like cook your own food, home cooked meals, in general, the food was relatively safe. You didn't see a lot of these major health epidemic issues. Maybe in certain pockets, like if you had farmers or you had a corporation that was dumping chemicals in the water, you get a lot of people getting cancer in a specific area or something like that. But what we're seeing now is we've got so much processed food. We've got so many different things that are not regulated enough. I would say specifically with the food industry and things related to health, and you have people making just stupid decisions. Like everybody knows that smoking is going to give you cancer, but people still smoke, right? But that drives up healthcare costs. So we're kind of in this weird situation in America with healthcare where everything is crazy expensive because there's a lot of people getting sick, and there's a lot of people living for a very long time with illnesses for a very long time. So like statistically, the majority of Americans that are middle-aged are actually on some type of prescription medication. Okay, so let's just say by the time you're 50 years old, you're having health complications. You live till you're 80, 85. That's 30 plus years of health complications. That's a lot of money going into your health care versus somebody that takes care of themselves, stays healthy, and maybe they have like a few things in their 60s or 70s. They live till they're 80 or 90, and maybe like they just have a couple years there where they have some serious health complications, or they need like a hip replacement or whatever, right? But in general, like they just kind of get old and they die, right? So all these different kinds of factors are essentially driving up costs. Now, what is happening with Obamacare is what they're saying is you can't deny people because of pre-existing conditions, which is good. I agree with that, right? We all agree with that. That's super important. kids can stay on their parents' plans until they're 26, I believe. It's 26, if I'm not mistaken. Those kinds of things, right? That's fine. They pass the requirement, so everybody has to have health insurance, which I don't agree with that. I believe that's an overreach of government power. But what they essentially did is they forced insurance companies to take people that were sick and essentially lump them in with everybody else. So let's just say you got somebody who is dying of cancer, and let's just say that their treatment over the course of the next 10 years is going to cost $500,000 or $1 million, right? And let's just say you take somebody else who's just healthy. They're not sick, they don't have any problems, and their healthcare costs over the next 10 years is going to be a couple $1,000s, right? Well, that $500,000 person is going to drive up the cost significantly for the person that is healthy. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing major upticks in healthcare costs. We're even seeing insurance companies pull out of certain regions because they're saying like, hey, we can't make money, we can't compete here, we're out. They're pulling out of Obamacare. So what is going on with healthcare at the moment, what the Republicans are proposing, is it's kind of messy, but the gist of it seems to be that what they're saying is they want to try to create a free market system, so they give you tax credits to go out and buy your own healthcare insurance. They want to let you go across state lines because there's certain states and areas where you can't do that, and so because of that, you basically don't get access to affordable healthcare. It's crazy expensive. And yeah, I mean, basically like what you should be paying, like if you have a family, like a husband, a wife, and like a couple kids, maybe you should be paying like $500 a month at most for your health insurance, okay? Like that's kind of what the free market should present, like roughly $100 per person, $150 per person, not more than that. If it's more than that, that's just insane. But the only way that, and actually preferably it's nice if you can get it cheaper, but by going across state lines you can get access to cheaper rates in areas where they're willing to give you that. There's a lot of different innovative solutions. I do like the idea of the free market getting into healthcare. Now, the challenge and what Republicans, at least what I've heard Paul Ryan say and different people, is what they're doing is they want to take all the sick people, right? So these people that are presently sick, if they go and apply for health insurance, what they're going to do is drive up the cost for everybody else because they're sick, they need lots of treatment, and we want to get them that health care. But if you can create two different pools, like here's the healthy population and here's people with pre-existing conditions that are really severe, like somebody that has like a really serious health issue and they're going to need like $500,000 or $1 million in health care, create a separate pool for those people and have the government subsidize those people and basically, make sure that they get health insurance, so they get their, really expensive health insurance or government program, and they're all taken care of. And the rest of us, hey, here's a tax credit, go buy your own insurance. Now, it's an interesting proposal. I don't know if we can afford it because the government's already in debt. As far as buying our own insurance, it's interesting. If the price is competitive, I don't have a problem with it. The theory is nice. So I'd say, hey, why not give it a try? I can't really see any major downsides to it. The only major downside I could see is for people that don't pay their taxes. So there's a lot of people out there that don't pay their taxes. They're really poor. They're uneducated. They just, whatever. They don't know how to handle their taxes well. They don't know how to handle their money. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge for those people because what do? Like, oh, I don't know how to do my taxes. I'm like homeless. How do they get their tax credits and get, the information so that they can make informed decisions? Like, that is a concern. Like, how do you help the homeless people? How do you help people that are really poor? So it seems like if you go with what the Republicans are proposing right now, you almost have to create like some kind of assisted program to help people make those kinds of decisions and get their tax credits and get their taxes in. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really dicey. It's really complicated. And it's interesting because, and this is what happens in politics, because the theories always sound good, the philosophies are good, but when you actually get to the execution, how this is actually going to work, you're thinking about all of the fallout options and maybe the exceptions to the rule, you run into problems. And so this whole healthcare thing is a big mess. And part of the problem is that, like with Obamacare, this wasn't just like a one-page bill where they just said, hey, we're going to do this, this, and this. This was a massive bill. I mean, and that's the problem with a lot of legislation, is they don't just have like these one-off bills where they just pass a single piece of legislation. They pass one big fat one with all these attachments on it, and it could be 1,000 pages, it could be 2,000 pages, it could be 3,000 pages of legislation just for one law. And that creates a lot of problems because it's just a big mess to try to sort through it, fix it, assess it, etc. So I think that overall, I would say there's an interesting direction with this. We'll see how it all pans out. I do like the idea of free market competition in healthcare. I do like the idea of trying to figure out ways to subsidize people that have serious illnesses so that you can drive down the cost for the everyday people. That's a good decision because that's free market economics. And you got to realize, like with me, I won't really say like, I'm super partisan, but I would say that I value economic smarts, if you will. Okay, I've taken economics in college. I got a business degree. For me, it's all about the economics, the finances, all of that. That needs to be the first thing in place. And then after that, now we can kind of look into the different details, but the economics have to make sense. So with healthcare, getting it into the market, letting the market compete for people's business, compete for healthcare business, that's a smart idea. It lends itself to more innovation because what happens is, and this is just kind of a general business principle, but basically, like if you have a free market, what that does is, let's just say that you take one of those photos in the background. So, I can't even. This kid's confused with the camera. So, let's get my finger. So that right there, that's a picture in Hawaii. I think my parents went to Hawaii and they brought that back or something at some point. And this is a guest room that I'm in right now at the house here. But that was a picture from Hawaii that I think my parents gave me at some point or whatever. That's how that ended up there. That helicopter picture, that might have been from Hawaii too. I haven't actually been to Hawaii. Okay, let's just say that those things sell for $10. Okay, so somebody's selling pictures for $10. Everybody's buying pictures because they want pictures of Hawaii for $10, right? Well, if you don't have a free market economy, like the government runs things, the government sets prices, it's kind of more of a socialistic system. What can happen is the government only has one provider for posters. So that poster provider says, hey, well, we're the only provider of posters. Well, you know what? We're going to charge $30 per poster. What's the government going to do? So maybe the government fixes the price and they're like, well, we're going to say it's $15, or maybe they keep it at $10 and they just say, hey, $10 for a poster. All right. But there's no competition. Well, what happens when you bring in competition is maybe there's somebody that comes along and they say, hey, I think I could get those things printed for $1 a piece and I could turn around and sell them for $2. So somebody sets up their own printing press, they start cranking these things out, they get them done for $1. Maybe they're like, oh crap, maybe it was $1.25 or $1.50, so I have to sell it for $3 instead of $2. Okay, they sell it for $3. Well, all of a sudden, because of competition, because somebody else was allowed to compete fairly in the free market, you just drove down the cost of printing posters because now it's $3 instead of $10. So that's what free market economics do, is it allows people to come in and compete, and anybody can do it. Like, you can come in and compete, I can go in and compete. And even in the healthcare insurance industry, like, let's just say that you, if there's free market economics, let's just say that you start some different companies, you become a millionaire, and you're like, hey, I want to start a health insurance company. So you start a local health insurance company in your city, you invest X amount of dollars into insuring people, and you start to kind of ramp it up and grow from there. You can do that, and you can set the prices because now you own a health insurance company. So that's the fun thing about free market economics, is that anybody can start a business, anybody can create stuff. You do need appropriate regulations in place, especially when you're dealing with people's health and things like that to protect consumers. That's all important. You do need appropriate documentation so you know what you're getting yourself into. But at the end of the day, I really like free market economics. I like that applied to healthcare, and I do like that notion in terms of this healthcare bill. So we'll see how it all pans out. Like I said, it might be an issue for certain people, and especially, we do have a lot of immigrants that are undocumented. So how do you deal with those people? Are they being given health insurance? Are they not? Do you have, and I think probably even on the state level, I'm guessing at the moment, like if you're in a sanctuary city or a sanctuary state like California, I'm guessing that undocumented immigrants have some kind of free access to healthcare or something, because that on the state level they can kind of make their own program. So maybe they don't have to get it all figured out on the federal level. Maybe on the state level there's certain things that can be delegated, but it's a big mess. And if you were to ask me my perspective on things, I would say to the government, I would just say this. I would just say repeal Obamacare, leave the thing for pre-existing conditions, the thing that lets kids stay on their parents' plan until they're 26, leave those two things, and then take Medicaid and reform it, because you already have a program in place that's a federal program. Take Medicaid, reform it, make sure these doctors are getting paid so that they're happy with taking Medicaid, and just fix Medicaid. Like, why do we have to have Obamacare? Why do we have to have another healthcare plan, entitlement, whatever? Like, just move everybody over to Medicaid, streamline the program, make it better. If you want to let people stay on Obamacare for the next 3 to 5 years, okay, whatever. But that's kind of my opinion on things as far as this whole healthcare issue. But we'll see what happens. It's a big mess. I heard that it's a 200-day plan, so we're probably not even going to see anything until probably this fall. So we'll see what happens with the government. Probably sometime in this fall we'll see what happens with healthcare, and it'll be interesting. I really hope that the Republicans hit a home run with this one, because it is a badly needed thing. And I'm just saying this from experience. Like, I've got people that in my home state are paying insane amounts of money for health insurance. Like, I talked to one guy, he's a psychologist, he's got his own practice. He said he's paying something like $750 a month for health insurance. That is way too much money. And he said that before this whole Obamacare legislation, he was paying a lot less than that. Like, it was significantly cheaper. But now he's paying something like $750 a month for health insurance, which is crazy expensive. That's literally, what is that? It's like $9,000 a year just for health insurance. It's too much money. So anyways, I'm done talking about politics. Thanks for watching, guys. Feel free to subscribe, and we will see you back for more content.